Well, Broncos country, a mile high salute to you all, man. If you're here in Denver area, hope you guys are surviving the snow. We got a lot more snow here than we had anticipated. But as the trade deadline ended yesterday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, Broncos didn't make any moves. We stayed quiet. Aside from trading away Baron Browning and obviously extending Jonathan Cooper, we didn't add any new players. And we'll talk about what does that mean? Is it a good move? Is it bad? And maybe we'll get into a little bit about what I wish would have happened, if anything. So we'll get into that, guys. Before we do that, if it's your first time on the channel, welcome. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I cover all things Denver sports. I put a focus on the Broncos. We'll talk some Nuggets. We'll talk some Abs. We got some videos on that coming later as well. And so we'll get into it. So I appreciate it. Appreciate the love. I'm on a mission of 500 subscribers. So thank you in advance. Let's get into it, guys. As we all know, the Broncos yesterday they stood pat. They didn't make any moves, like some in Broncos country had anticipated. I was never really of the idea that we would, just given where we were and kind of seeing the behavior of this, the head coach, obviously, in the front office in terms of what they did in the offseason and what the focus has been this year. Now, we are 5-4 through the first 9 games. Had we been 2-7 or 3-6, I do think we probably would have uh, let some more players go. I think sellers was always a much higher possibility than being buyers. Even if we were 7-2, I don't know if we would have went out there and made any moves because you have to be very diligent about the players that you bring in. I think Sean Payton and George Payton have proven that, right? They've proven that they are meticulous with who they bring in, not just from a skill set standpoint and where they fit within the system, but also how the person fits in the locker room. That's something that Sean Payton has talked about a lot over the course of the last several months. How do these guys fit into the culture that we're trying to build? How do they react when the team loses? Are they an uplifting type of a presence? All of that has to be taken into account. And you can't do too much of that kind of homework, even of existing players that you have some background on during the trade deadline. So that's always a big piece, right? But I would have liked to see them add in the running back room specifically because I think it's an easier position to trade for. There's typically more guys that are available, and they can usually adapt to a playbook more quickly. Can't really the same can't be said necessarily on the receiver and on the tight end market. But ultimately we stood pat. And as a Bronco fan, as you know, it gets a little bit frustrating because you kind of hype yourself up with these hypothetical situations. But I think it's a good move overall. Um, it shows once again that Sean Payton is going to be patient with this rebuild. One thing that I have appreciated the most about him, just some background for those of you guys that don't know, I was not really a big fan of the Sean Payton hiring at first. I hated the fact that we had to give up a second round pick for him. And I just felt like it was a move that was trying again to put a band-aid over a big issue because I didn't think that Sean Payton would fully commit to a rebuild. But I've been very pleased to see that that's not the case at all. He's totally fine with rebuilding. He's taking a patient approach. He drafted his quarterback this last year in Bo Nix. And that in and of itself, Broncos country needs to be looked at as a win, as a huge win. Because I truly believe that we have found our franchise quarterback. For those of you that don't feel that way yet, that's totally fine. But I would say open up your mind a little bit and just look at the skill set, look at the potential, look at what you see. There's been so many flash plays, and a lot of times with quarterbacks that you feel like have a limited ceiling, like some people were worried about with Bo, or we're just going to end up being, above average starters in the NFL. A lot of those guys, they never really have that flash. He's got a lot of that flash. He'll take the basics of, playing quarterback in this league and he'll make that more consistent. But there's a lot of traits that he has that are uncoachable, man, that I've really liked. And if that continues and the upward trajectory for Bo continues and we don't make the playoffs or we do make the playoffs, at the end of the day, it's a successful season because the most important thing is you feel like you get the quarterback in place. Building around him is easy now. Very, very easy. Otherwise, you're just chasing the same thing year in and year out. And so for that, I'm very optimistic. And I think Broncos country should be as well. Also, there has been a lot of developmental players that up to this point have been disappointing, right? Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Devon Vele to an extent. Maybe he hasn't gotten as much opportunities, but that doesn't mean that that's the writings on the wall for them. So continuing to see what it is that we have with these young players is crucial, and I'm glad that we're gonna be giving them those opportunities. I Before the season started, I was all about trading Sutton for that exact reason. But we ended up, getting rid of Tim Patrick in advance. At that point, keeping Sutton made sense because you had to have some semblance of a veteran presence for a young quarterback. But this still allows the opportunity for other guys to develop defensively. I think there's been a lot of defensive players that are young that have been developing very, very well for this Broncos team, and I'd like to see more of that as well. Give me more Ayoma Wuzurike. I'd like to see him activated and at least get a decent amount of snaps every single week. I'd like to see eventually at some point Drew Sanders play, and I'd like to see Nick Bonito continue on this huge upward trend that he's on. He's been a baller. Riley Moss, we know how much we love him. He's been a gem. So a lot of really positive things. Now, what does that mean for the Broncos moving forward? Well, obviously, we find ourselves in the middle of a playoff push, right? We're in the gauntlet of the schedule. We're getting ready to face the Chiefs this week. And I think with the way the roster is currently constructed and the way that the things that we have shown, we can certainly go in and get an upset victory in Kansas City. I like our chances against them a lot better than I did against Baltimore. Not because I think Baltimore is a better team than Kansas City, but we tend to play Kansas City well anyways. Divisional opponents are always going to play each other more tight, but I think we match up better against them. We kind of have an idea of how they're going to run offensively. If we can, stop the run and eliminate the number one target for um, for Patrick Mahomes, their offense has not shown to be as explosive as it is now. Listen, at the end of the day, they're the Chiefs. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to make a run at the Super Bowl. I hope not, but we already know that's kind of the case. But it doesn't mean that we can't beat them in Kansas City for sure. I think we have a really good shot. But the rest of the season should be all about mixing and matching some things. I would like to see the Broncos sit Lil Jordan Humphrey and maybe give somebody like A.T. Perry an opportunity. See what it is that we have, because I don't think little Jordan Humphrey playing and not playing and A.T. Perry being activated and playing this week, I don't think it changes the odds of you winning the game whatsoever. In fact, if anything, it's only going to increase them. So that's what I'd like to see. Maybe eventually we'll see Blake Watson. Maybe eventually we'll see more Audric Estime. Can he take over in the second half of the season, right? If his fumbling problems are behind him. So there's a lot of moves like that. Can Lucas Kroll develop somehow, some way? Who knows? Is Greg Dulcich going to get another opportunity at some point? There's a lot of these question marks that are going to be interesting to see the answers for. Um, Same with Donald Parham, right? So that's what I would expect to see more of. Maybe the Broncos end up, signing some vets that get cut or released later on in the season already have, or, some developmental guys that they bring in. But the focus right now is going to be on developing the guys that we have, trying to stack up as much wins, growing together as a unit, both offensively and defensively, really as a team as a whole, which I love because I think that it's the right approach and it gives you the clearest path forward. By the end of the year, you'll have a lot of questions answered. You're not going to be going into next year of, oh, is Troy Franklin, what kind of player is Troy Franklin going to be? What kind of player is Devon Bailey going to be? You have a lot of those questions answered. You get a lot better understanding of those players, and that helps you with what you do in free agency and what you end up doing in the draft, etc. So I think it's the right way to build a team, and you're going to know exactly what does Bo need around him to make him more successful, right? So what type of players, not just which position, but what types of traits those particular players bring within, um, in that whole developmental process. So I like it. I'm totally fine. I think Broncos country should be okay with it. It doesn't, for me, either way, doesn't change the outlook that I had for this team. I had them at 9 wins at the beginning of the year. They're trending it that way. Hopefully, we can get it more. Um, at the halfway point of the season. Right now, we're projected to finish the season 10-7, based off of being in the halfway point. But 10-7, 9-8 is kind of right in that wheelhouse. Huge game coming up against Kansas City. We'll be doing a lot of work on that. So stay tuned for some Kansas City predictions. And yeah, I want to know what you guys think. Where's your head at during this process with um, the trade deadline being behind us? And what do you hope to see moving forward? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm curious to know your thoughts. Otherwise, guys, stay warm, stay safe, spend time with the people you love most, and we'll talk to y'all later. Go Broncos, baby. Peace out.